Welcome to J Squared, our podcast series that we have. I'm Jessica Whitmore, and this is my colleague Jean Troy, and we are with DAZA Development, and we are doing part two about boards. So today we are going to continue our discussion on all things boards. So Jean, I'll let you
Well, I
give us
will preface it that we might be a little punchy. It's been a heck of a week. We presented at a conference outside Philadelphia. So if we get a little punchy, just laugh along with us because we do all the time. Um, so last time we talked about boards, where do you get board members? What are the roles and responsibilities? How critical boards are in a nutshell. This time we're going to kind of go a deeper dive. So now your board's in place. Oh boy, now what? So what does that entail? Well, a couple things, and we'll take them individually. Boards, people think boards come with this innate knowledge of, I'm a board member and I know what to do. Huh? If we could tell you the stories of how people who are board members don't know what to do. So that goes along with board training, board training in the mission and the vision of the organization. And how does the organization see themselves getting to where they need to be, and the critical role that boards play. And some board members think, well, my name's on the board, I don't have to do anything. Other board members jump right into the weeds up to their head, and they really don't need to do that either. So there is a certain amount of training and understanding, and I don't want to say role playing, but maybe role playing. I've done that with boards.
walk through situations and
Exactly,
yep,
scenarios and
yep.
stuff like that. And you know,
Beyond trusting each other. And you remember there was a time where everybody had like all these trust related scenario things. So more than just trusting each other, but getting into the
and it's being open to what needs to be done. And if it may or may not agree with how you think it should be done, but if it's a proven success story and successful way to do and raise money and get out in the community, then think before you leap and say, this isn't really how it should be done. Listen, I think would be.
and I'd add there comes a little bit of humility that comes into it because a lot of people who serve on boards have really great like corporate backgrounds and knowledge within it. And so there's this assumption that I'm going to be on the board and I'm bringing all this corporate knowledge and I'm going to run it like it was my own business. And nonprofits are so different. There are some things that transfer well and other things do not. So a little bit of humility that yes, you're a subject matter expert in your field of knowledge, whether it's law, real estate, communications, I don't know, HR, whatever that may be. You may be the subject expert there, but you may have to be a little humble to learn about nonprofits and listen and find your own nonprofit mentor and read books and listen to consultants and things like that.
Listen to consultants. Yeah. So there's training, there's understanding that a nonprofit is not like a for-profit. So as Jessica said, you may bring all this experience, but that experience doesn't necessarily translate into this is what works for an NPO, nonprofit organization board. Doesn't always do that. So you're right. Being a little humble, I would say
Yeah.
check the ego at the door kind of
And
thing.
it also depends on what kind of nonprofit board you're on. If you're
Right.
on a higher education board, that operates differently than the small little community family nonprofit that was started to
And
reach
then
the
that
goal.
operates differently from the American Cancer Society or
Yes, or a hospital, nonprofit hospital board. So yeah, it's a little bit of understanding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the surroundings. That's
Yes.
pretty critical. So your board's in place, you've done the training. Um, a lot of board members will say, I don't want to ask for money. Wow. Okay. Can I just say that is one of the jobs that you're supposed to do? So part of that board training may be in the art of the ask or the art of the statement. I don't ask, I make a statement, but you want to be able to utilize and leverage your contacts and your group of people that would support why you're on that board. You want to be able to leverage that. You have contacts that the organization doesn't. That's hopefully why you're on the board and for some of the skill sets that you do bring. So learning how to ask is really not that hard.
Well, you know what?
I'm
We say that because
32.
we're in the
Right.
nature of it all the time. There's people are hesitant for various reasons. I think whenever a board member says, "I'll help in any way, but don't ask me to raise money," I'm always like, then you don't want them on your board because that's, like you said, one of the jobs of it. But I think sometimes people think it's almost like a salesman. Like I've heard it, like everybody's pitching about donations and things like that. That's very sales corporate minded and we're not.
Transactional. It's very
Yes, we're
transactional.
very much, it's very relationship based, it's very much, but you have to ask, big donor is not just going to wait and do it on his own or her own. You have to ask that. And that's part of that training. But you don't have to do the training alone. I mean, gosh, we have so many resources and different things related to all those
And,
training.
and the biggest thing about asking is doing it in your voice, in
Mhm.
your way, conversational tone. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. When I ask for money, and I do that with air quotes, I don't make it a question. I make it a statement. Here's how your $10,000 will help XYZ organization. So the ask is there, but it's a statement. Because if you say to them, Jessica, oh, we would love if you gave $10,000. You think you can do that? What would you
Well,
say?
you've just given me a yes or no answer. So I can say yes, or I can say no.
And if you
So,
say no, conversation is over. But if
right.
you state, here's how your $10,000 can make a difference to this organization, and then sit back, be quiet, shut up, don't talk, all that
Yes.
stuff. Just like go silent.
You have to embrace the silence, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. And it's actually kind of fun to do sometimes. I've done it at conferences, I've done it in teaching in the college classroom. You ask a question, you just sit back and wait, and you don't have to fill that air with your continual thoughts. You can just ask the question, give somebody a couple minutes
To
to
digest.
ponder it. Yeah, yeah.
So when I phrase it like that, and they'll say to me, "Well, I can't do 10,000." Okay, what can you do?
Mhm,
Again, not a yes or no
mhm.
question. So the idea is to keep the conversation going as a board member and really staff member, anybody, so that you can get down to where they are comfortable with a number that they can tell you. So,
And if they say no, then okay, maybe it's not the right ask within your organization. Then you just keep on having a conversation too
right.
about what really does interest you. Yeah,
I
because it's
call
more
that the
relational.
discovery phase. You really want to find out all this
Yes.
stuff prior to the time that you ask for money. But board members have to do that discovery test too, because if they're going to be out on calls, and generally board members will tag team with the executive
Mhm.
director, development director, they'll tag team it that way. So I would bring a board member along to explain to the potential donor why they're involved in the organization. What is it about the organization that makes them want to be involved on the level that they are
Mhm.
as a board member? So that helps in many different conversations and many different ways. So really sometimes the ask doesn't come down to the board member, but more to the staff. I prefer it if the board member
Right.
does it, and here's why. I'm asking a peer, I feel like a peer of the realm, but I'm asking a peer to give funds. That peer will say no to a staff member and to the executive director. It is much harder for a peer to say no to a peer.
Well, and the staff member and the executive director are paid to ask.
Correct. Paid.
A board member is there out of hopefully service and a heart, not out of social standing. But you know what I mean? Yes, so it's very much.
Yeah. It's and so that's one thing. And there's ways for board members to get involved, not just necessarily in asking, but if you're an organization that has a sustaining donor database, a sustaining donor base, then when the newsletters, when the thank you notes go out, bring some to the board for that week and have them sign it. They can sign their name to it, write a little note if they know the person. So they're getting involved on a most basic level of donor thank you and donor stewardship.
Yep.
That's just one way.
Uh, uh,
There's so many different ways that they can get.
Another way is I know a bunch of nonprofit executive directors who rely on their board to, one, go to events and just kind of be the representation of the organization. or two, be on the lookout for events and send them over to the executive director and say, hey, I learned about this event. Are you able to go? Do you want one of our board members to go? Kind of that way. I know that's the way that boards can be involved too.
So you're not just there as a board member, and everybody needs to remember this. You are one of the faces of that organization. And people look at me like, but that's the executive director's job. No. I mean, yes, it is, but no, it's
Right, right.
everybody's job. Everybody's job is to be the face of your organization, whether you are a volunteer or a staff person or somehow connected,
Mhm.
or even a person if it's a food pantry, drops off food and knows the organization, they can go out and talk about it.
Yep.
Problem, the concern is that you're all saying things differently. You want to get the key points that everybody agrees to. You've got talking points. This is what you should have at the top of your head. Your mission statement, that's easy to say in less than 4 seconds.
And everybody should know it. I've had many board members where I've asked for, can you tell me what the mission statement of your organization? Oh, you have to ask so and so. No, 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 no. If you're on the board,
You should
you
know.
should know the mission statement. And that mission statement should be short enough to remember it.
Right. I mean, there's mission statements I know of that one was 51 words long. I don't know, 1, 2, 3. And I got up to 51 and I said, oh no, none of you are
Well,
going to remember 51 words. Knock it down to less than 20 is preferable. Less than 10 is even better. I mean, look at Nike's. Nike's tagline is just do it. Everybody
yeah.
remembers that.
In story writing for journalistic, your headlines should range from 13 to 26, nothing above that.
Oh,
So
really?
same,
Wow.
same
Okay.
concept.
Yeah.
Yep. Keep
So,
it short.
everybody is the face, but if you can't remember what the mission statement is, your face isn't going to do any good. You
Right,
gotta
right.
really remember and
And on that note too, it's important for board members, executive directors, because you are the face of the organization, show up appropriately for whatever the situation is, whether it's a golf tournament, a cheese and wine thing, some high level event. Be appropriate, knowing that pictures will also probably be taken so that you're giving a good representation. I mean, I have been in meetings where board members have shown up disheveled, spots all over their shirts, all that. You're there, you're representing the organization. And that donor is going to be like, wow, his shirt's missing 3 buttons. How can I trust him with my $5,000 gift if he's not presenting? So you're kind of always on when you're,
and a little bit along that note, if you as a board member are taking a prospective donor through the organization, to show them how the process and how it works, and this is where the food comes in if it's a food pantry and how the process whole thing works. Make sure that the organization itself, the building, the surroundings, everything is neat and clean and organized and presentable. You don't want to walk into Bedlam and have crayon marks everywhere and things like that. You really need to think about that perception from the donor. Even if you're a board member, what was your perception when you first saw the building that the organization's in? What did you think? I mean, I've been involved with organizations where it's just like, no, clean this up.
yeah.
You would not have somebody come through, well, maybe here because I have pictures everywhere, but a house that looks like a hurricane hit it and expect people to be comfortable.
It's
You want
one thing if you just bought the building and you're bringing them in and like, look at what we have. We're working on cleaning this up, blah, blah, blah. But if it's your daily existence, and our minds are trained in a way to look for what's out of place. So
yep,
if a donor's going in and they're expecting X, Y, and Z, and you show them the opposite, then that's going to stick out to them. And they're not going to say it. They're not
no,
going to be like,
but
oh, we're not giving you money because your floors were a disaster. They're not going to say that, but that might be what
that might be
they're
why.
thinking. Yeah.
So optics are everything. Just kind of keep that in mind. The other thing too with board members, use your connections. If you don't want to ask for money, again, we talked about that, but yeah, you are. But if you don't want to ask for money, use your connections. Who do you know that would believe in this mission enough to want to make a gift?
Mhm.
And then be the facilitator and the person who introduces the ED or the director of development to this particular potential donor, and you be with them because you know them. So, there's that comfort level. So connections are just as important as asking for money, but you have to do both. I will go back
And
and
people are more connected than they realize
Mhm.
too. You know what I mean?
it's
So
it's funny. Like somebody said, who I can't remember who it was. One of our clients said to me, "Well, I can't ask for money. I don't know anybody." And then I said, "Well, why did you join? Why are you on the board?" So they told me the reasons, and well, I was talking to so and so and so and so and so and so, and I'm going 2, 3, 4, 5. You're up to
yeah,
10.
right? Yeah.
You know. What do you mean you don't know anybody? You just said 10 people, 10 different names.
Mhm.
They don't, board members don't think of who they know enough to make an impact.
Well, and I think
Makes
sometimes
sense.
board members have this big idea that I have to be bringing in all these huge $50,000 donors. Don't forget about the smaller donors, the ones who are giving $25 every month that are consistent, and how you can further develop that, and all the different aspects that can go into fundraising within
Because
that.
80% of the donors are those smaller, consistent donors. It's the 20% that give the 10, the 20, the 50 or more. That's not the
Yeah.
makeup
Yeah.
of most organizations' donors. It's normal peeps like us. Like
Mhm.
I'm thinking of an organization I've been contributing on what I would consider a nominal amount, but it makes a difference for the past 12 years.
Mhm.
So just think if everybody who all of a sudden said, well, I'm done here,
Yeah, you're losing
like
it.
there's a huge
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah.
So your connections can help fill the gaps that maybe funding didn't cover, grants didn't cover. There's tons of ways your connections can make a difference.
Yeah.
So don't downplay, is that the word? Downplay the role
Yeah, I
that
think that's the word.
connections have. Told you we'd be a little punchy. Don't downplay that role. And I think then for the final, at least my final thought, step out of your comfort zone. We're so afraid to go like I'm a board member and I'm like just going to go right along here and I'm not going to step out of my lane. No, step out of your lane because stepping out of that lane may open up possibilities that nobody thought of. And if you get too comfortable and the organization gets too comfortable, then there's opportunities that are going to be missed. And you as a board member are responsible for the fiduciary aspects and the financial aspects of the organization. So you have to keep that in mind in whatever interactions you do. And I think, and when there is actually one more, and Jessica, if you want to add on to that before I,
Yeah, well, I'll add this part. Just make sure that stepping out of your comfort zone does not mean that you're stepping into the organization more, because you have an executive director, you have staff members, you have volunteers, you might have consultants, and stepping into the roles that you're not supposed to fill, not there for, can create more chaos and more whatever. If you don't understand or you want to learn how something works, that's great. But sometimes when board members try to get too involved in the little nitty-gritty of the daily, it becomes too cumbersome and chaotic and things like that.
and it
So
can slow the process down. So
yes.
by and that's a good point. And maybe I didn't phrase it right. By stepping out of the comfort zone, stepping out of your comfort zone when it comes to asking for money or bringing people in, not
Yep.
in the day-to-day runnings of the
I mean,
organization.
it's great. And if you feel like somebody's not, your executive director, your staff members, whatever, volunteers are not doing things correctly, that's part of your responsibility as a board member within it, but not to, you know,
We don't want you to write the grants. We got
yeah, don't write my grants. Please don't.
and then
Um,
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say the other thing, and this kind of ties into it all, is we discuss all these things, and if you're doing like a board retreat or a board meeting or something like that, we all know that everybody has conversations in their own heads that are going on. And so you're thinking that, I've told my board X, Y, and Z. They should know this. There are ways to keep them accountable. And one of them is, we were just talking about this at our conference, of making sure that when board members come on, they're signing off on understanding their responsibilities, whether it's a board retreat you do annually or a strategic plan that you're updating or things like that. So, making sure that somehow you have it, they've signed off. I understand my roles.
That doesn't mean they read it, but they signed off.
Yeah, but they signed off.
Yeah, and that's critical. And I think then the final thing is I can't remember where I heard this, but years ago. If you are on more than three boards at one time, that's two boards too many. I mean, no more than three because you're serving so many different people. Plus, you also have to have work-life balance. I say that with somewhat of a
Well, I would say I do know some retired people who are on multiple boards, but they see it more as like a mentoring opportunity to
correct.
mentor
That's different.
younger
If
board
you're
members.
still working and you have a family and you have a
Mhm.
job and you're on three boards, you have no time.
Well,
So,
and plus, you're supposed to work for the benefit of each
right.
of those organizations. So that means each of those organizations, you're going to have to donate in some way. You
Yep.
are going to have to be mindful of what opportunities are available. You're going to have to be mindful of what events. So yeah, it's not just sitting down and giving directions and
It's not.
signing forms
So
on them.
pick and choose your boards, ones that you have a real passion for, because that passion will show in your conversations and your networking opportunities and things like that. If you're just on a board to be on a board, don't be on the board.
You're not helping anybody. And really, it's not elevating your social status as much as you think. Like,
No, that's true. That's true. It's not about social status. It's about making a difference in the organization and the people they serve, the pets they serve, the food they bring, whatever it is that the
yeah,
organization is.
the difference to
Bring
make.
your whole self, but don't bring it so that you're on five boards and you only have 20% to give.
Right.
It's just
I mean, I've had people say, well, will you be on this board? I mean, one time I was on two boards. One was related to athletics, one was related to education. But it was when my kids were in those phases of
right.
life, so it fit in well. But I've had people say, would you serve on this board? And I've said, no, but I'm willing to see if I can help you find somebody like who's in my network that I can say, hey, you might want to consider this person. So that's another way you can use your network as a board member to help fill in those gaps of other boards.
And I mean, it's a board is a board is a board, but not. What makes your board different from this board over here or that one back there? What are you doing to keep your board members engaged? What are you doing for training for your board members? What are you doing to help them do their job? Because we can't just assume they know what to do. They need help.
And they're not paid.
And they're not paid. Yes,
They
and
say
they're
their
not paid.
job.
By the way,
They're
they
a
should
version
not
of
be paid. Yes,
they're
they
a
should
version of a volunteer. So
right. So, we kind of hope over the last couple sessions on boards that it's opened your eyes to some things and given you things to think about. As always, we're here to answer questions, and I know our contact information is always added at the end. But reach out to us if you have any questions, and that's what we're here for.
and if you've
So,
missed any of our J Squared podcast, I know they're on social media. So go back and listen, share the link, to other people. And yeah, we're always willing to have an additional conversation.
so we hope everybody enjoy the different our topics. We're an interesting bunch when we do these, but we hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.